Everyone, welcome back to Play Casket with another episode of Casket Talk, and this week we're actually going to be talking about the console wars.
Fun.
Fun.
Die!
No graphics! You don't understand! It's the ratings mean everything!
Die!
Ah!
Episode 58, Console Warfare.
So, we're probably going to have... This is going to probably be like a multitude of different ones, so this is probably going to be our first type of one, and we're probably going to break down a couple other ones and stuff too. But this one's kind of like... It was kind of like our peak age of this, where like testosterone's running high, everyone's like picking a side, everyone like is trying to find their identity through stupid video game brands and stuff like that. And it's basically the GameCube, the PS2, the Dreamcast, rest in peace, and the Xbox era, like that era of gaming.
Man,
right?
I forgot about the Dreamcast, actually.
It's okay. Sega forgets about it all the time. Have you seen Skies of Arcadia? Nobody else has, because Sega has refused to listen to people and released it again.
Fuck it, we'll just make our own.
Don't. I'm pretty sure the moment we start one and like make a Kickstarter or whatever have you, several other people are going to do that too, and it's going to be bad. It's just bad. We shouldn't do that. Don't do that. Anyway, yes, the basically that era of gaming was kind of wild. Honestly, when you think about it, it was kind of like a we're just starting to get a hang of the 3D space type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, people were still trying to do some weird experimental stuff. People were still trying to find ways to get people to play stuff exclusively on their system, because, like, certain systems were still, like, exclusives mattered. And at the time, the PC was garbage. Like, nobody wanted the PC at the time.
God, I remember seeing the E3 videos. It was mostly just hardware. Like, they'll have like one or two, like, I can't remember who it was, but they were basically saying that, like, when they had their E3s, because like like console E3s were like cool and stuff, and then the PC one came out and everybody just kind of like dipped out.
The CES, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was just like, oh, talking about hardwares, and it's like dudes in polos and just talking about like stocks and then their hardware, and then you get like one really cool game, and then that's about it.
Yep.
So
that was like some kind of simulator and stuff too.
So yeah, Generation 6, at least from what it's saying. The PS2, GameCube.
I think this is actually, could it be Generation 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking up right now. Right.
Well, damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
I thought it was older than that. I thought it was like 8, because like people, I don't know. There are some people who are like just confirming that the Atari by itself was its own generation. Can you just imagine Atari just be like sitting there waving flags like, I'm number one, even though you almost quite literally ended the entire industry anyway. Without any competition, you still thought the industry needed to die. Like, but you're just sitting there like, yeah, I got no competition. I'm so cool. Like, oh my God, that would have been... Thank God social media wasn't around at the time. Let's be honest. Let's be real there, you know? But, yeah, okay, 6th generation. Cool. But no, like, it was kind of wild, honestly. I think it was like the last generation too that had million sellers that mattered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when it sold millions, you're like, boom, Nintendo's player's choice. Here it is. Here's $20. It's off, and it has a new little, like, you know, banner and crap.
God, remember when games were $20 brand new?
There's some that are like that now, but that's usually a telltale sign that it's absolute garbage.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into nitty gritty. What side were you on in this warfare?
PS2 actually. I was they had all like the cool weeb shit. That was like my weeb phase. I'm still in my weeb phase, I guess, but yeah, well, it was really cool because like
it's hard to leave the weeb phase when your body looks like a body pillow.
Well, the thing is that like they had like that kind of stuff like since the internet wasn't around, you know, when they had like anime stuff is really, really cool. I remember on Twitter too, people were talking crap about like New York Times, or not New York Times, Times Square. Oh, Western stuff, dumb. But in Japan, oh my God, like soy face. But the reason why it's so cool and exotic because you don't see it here. Like it's really rare that I just saw a Hatsune Miku bus pass by. That's really cool because that's like probably the only one in the entire state, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
I remember, like, I wasn't too into anime stuff at the time, but I remember when Toonami was like literally the only way you were gonna get any of that.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, it was that, or there was like some hole in the wall, no windowed store that was like around the corner of a shopping district, and you go down the stairs, and it was there. That's where like the anime, manga, comic shop was. Like, it would have some Western comics, but the whole reason why it had Western comics is because it had to have that in order to have a storefront like that at the time. And that's where you would get a lot of it. And like, you would go there, and there really wouldn't be. There'd be a couple stereotypical greasy fat dudes there. You know, like they had those like thick glasses. They had like some kind of retainer. They kind of had to breathe through their mouth and stuff. Like, I'm not kidding when I say that. You know, and that was it. Like, you would periodically see one of them. You know, like, because I would go in there because it was just something that was interesting. Like, I wasn't too into anime, so it wouldn't matter too much, but it was the only place that had kind of figures or anything. I'm like, I'll check this out. They have some game figures there, so might as well, right? And, you know, you'd go in there, and it was oddly pink and, like, fluorescent blue or something like that. Like, there was a lot of pastels for some reason at that era. Like, that era of anime was weird.
caught the eye, I guess. Well, I mean, I know like the 90s too was the Matrix was like the really cool thing, so a lot of things were really, really black. So
that was 2000s. Like
2000s?
Black, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The black was 2000s. That's basically this era.
It's like gray and black, I guess.
Everything had to be edgy. Everything had to be dark colors with some small hint of like a neon, like some kind of cyberpunk and highlights and stuff like that. And like that was it. Like, you had to be more aggressive with your angst and stuff. Like, you don't understand who I am, and I have to feel like I'm just pushed down all the time. But even though like you would have like the most supporting parents.
But that was the reason why the PS2 was like caught my attention during that age range, because it did what Nintendo didn't do. It did what Nintendo don't.
Oh hell no, bro.
But well, because you see Nintendo and they do like the whole family friendly thing, like, hey, we make games for everybody. And I think Sony kind of knew that the PS1 the PS1 players were aging out into teens, so we're make the cooler games. They're edgier. We have gore and blood and sexy girls in bikinis, and then we have anime stuff.
And that M rating, that's what we're going to use as our de facto. We need that M rating.
Yeah.
Like, I remember a lot of that, and I'll probably get into that in a little bit, but I think one of the situations that happened was when the PS1 came in, it was easier to develop for compared to the cartridges.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of grew accustomed to the load time, so people can just make anything, even though it would take a long time to load any of it, because people are just like, okay, we'll just sit here for 30 years before the level loads up, you know? And from there, it allowed people to kind of create a lot more like weirdy, weeby stuff, right? So you got to a lot more of the expressive Japanese games kind of later in the PS1 era, that when the PS2 came in, like, that was something that was still around. So there's a lot of people like, oh yeah, PS1, PS2, obviously it's going to be better, so I'm just going to get that because that's where I got this stuff, right? Even though the Dreamcast existed, and the Dreamcast was way weirder with stuff like Sega saw that and was like, yeah, we can do that, and just went ham on it.
Well, didn't they mess up their launch basically? I know the Dreamcast was released, but the people didn't have time to save up for it, and they also released it when
the Dreamcast was announced and released within months apart from one another, which gave people no means to hype it up and talk about it and try to save money and focus on try to get it and stuff. Then as soon as the Dreamcast was coming out is when the PlayStation announced the PS2. So
Okay.
people are like, oh, I might as well just get ready to buy that.
I think it's also Gen 5, actually. I think the Dreamcast is actually Gen 5, not Gen 6.
Well, it was that
I
era.
believe.
They killed it off.
Yeah, because it was Gen 5, your Gen 6 was just coming in, and then Sega announced their stuff, and then PS2 announced at the same time? Or something. They messed up the announcement hardcore, though, but the Dreamcast was actually really impressive, just looking back on it. I do like the little memory card thing, because it's like
the memory card thing with the Tamagotchi nonsense was like some of the greatest things I've ever... Like, honestly, if anyone will do that with their system now, just to have me have some kind of little, like, I wouldn't say like a fidget toy basically now, like a digital fidget toy, I'd probably buy that system.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not lying. I think that would be really cool. In fact, that was one of the reasons why I bought the Heart Gold and Soul Silver games too, because I kind of like that, like the
pedometer,
the pedometer and stuff. Like, that was cool to me. I don't know why. I really wanted to just get into that type of stuff. It was really interesting. But yeah, like it was kind of crazy that like all of that happened for the Dreamcast, and they're like ready, and then it just, because the PS2 just curb stomped the crap out of it, like New York gangster style, just destroyed them. Like, it was brutal.
I remember the launch days too, when like people were fighting for it, people getting stabbed for their PS2s, stuff like that. You hear through like the rumor mill of like the good old Black Friday riots.
Oh my God!
People trying to get a hold of the PS2.
I still remember, like, and this has nothing to do with the video games, but I could only imagine what happened with the video games. Was I remember having my grandmother tell me to go get some cherry bonbons because I was like her favorite thing. Like, that's what she needs in order to celebrate the holidays or whatever. Me being like kind of 15, so that still same era of the PS2 and stuff like that. I'm like, all right, fine. I go, and there's like one last box, and I was like, reached over to grab it. I'm starting to walk away, and some old lady grabs my arm, spins around, and goes, "Hey, asshole! That was mine." I'm like, "You didn't touch it. Nobody was on it. I easily grabbed it. It wasn't like I was racing." I was like, "Sorry, these are mine, and I'm gone." And so I start walking away. She taps my shoulder again, and as I turn around, she full on kicks me in the groin and takes it and goes, something about naughty boys, blah blah blah, asshole, and just like kind of tries to run me over with her cart. You know, and she couldn't do it because obviously I was a big body and she was a weak woman after, you know, exerting her whole energy to completely crush my future generations. But like, I could only imagine going into an electronics department in that same time. You know what I mean? Like, if that was the situation that was happening then, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Well, if anything too, like, it could be just rumors too, because everybody always wants to, because it's all grapevine stuff too.
And nowadays, like, there's a lot of stories out there that, like, believable, that got so embellished over time.
Yeah.
Like, every time it was retold.
Well, then you look it up and it's like,
it gets weird. It gets weirder and weirder, and then like when somebody actually has other like proof, it shows that it was actually pretty tame.
Yeah.
And there isn't anything to go off of that anymore. And you're like, oh well, I guess he lied. I guess, you know, like.
And I was like, somebody got stabbed. It turns out like, oh, he just opened up the box and it wasn't his, and he opened it up with the knife, and he was like, oh, well, here you go, like.
Yeah.
Stuff
Something to that point, like, and you got to think like nowadays, like that type of thing will get you on the internet, and now that will get you more fame instead of shame anymore, which is kind of sad too. And I think that's why a lot more people are a lot more aggressive and egregious to each other now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad.
Well, another thing too is that like it does drive hype too, because it gets in the news, and then they'll, you know, like, oh, I'm hearing about this PlayStation 2 that people are fighting over it. It must be that good, you know.
Oh, I have an opportunity to get the thing that people have been fighting over, so I'm going to be awesome and stuff too. Like, yeah, I could totally see that.
Like Stanley Cups. I don't think anybody's gonna like understand this.
Like, I don't even
understand.
I don't understand it at all. Like, I'm sitting over here and I'm like watching it from afar, right? And people are just going nuts for them. And like, I've had like my other job, I do a lot of audits and stuff, and I used to do stuff for the Pokemon stuff. At least I can kind of explain, oh yeah, lockdowns caused people to get back in their hobbies. Their hobbies became fun again. They kind of reignited a spark in them, so they started buying more. And because they're starting to buy more, they were running out of some in some stores that people were willing to pay a little more to get back in their hobby. When that little more became a little more and a little more, scalpers came out and went, oh, you're willing to pay 20? Let's say 40. Let's say 60. Let's say $100 for this stuff. So scalpers are now trading back and forth, trying to generate this high-end demand for these cards. Now these cards are like hard to find, and it's just this huge thing. I could find that, but then Stanley Cups come around, and I'm like, I don't even know what this is going on. Like, I've heard people talking about how kids are being made fun of because their drinking cups aren't Stanleys. I'm like, dude, when I was a kid, Orbit's water that had that weird little floaties in it and stuff was like the de facto like water. But just because I had a Sprite, I wasn't made fun of. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to be like the cool kid, the rich kid who would always bring in all these cool flavors and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm cool. But when I would ever come to my mom, and she'd be like, no. And then she would give me another Sprite and tell me to shut up. Sometimes it's not even a good Sprite. Sometimes it's like the off-brand counter Sprite. Like, it's not even like the store brand. It is like, when I was a kid, there was not only a store brand, but then there was under store brand. It was like the weird name. It was like some kind of like breakout company that was kind of maybe local, maybe not. Who knows? That thing was in the ether somewhere. And it was worse than store brand. Like, store brand is just okay or mediocre. This was just bad, you know? And it was like cheap. You know, it was like $1.50 for a 12-pack at that time. You know what I mean?
And that's why you have to get a PS2 instead of a GameCube, right?
How dare you? Because my side was the GameCube. I grew up with a lot of Nintendo stuff. We've talked about it before. Even our last Casket talk, we talked about it before. I've talked about a lot of the games that Nintendo has. Hell, we've seen how many games I bought for the Nintendo Switch. We know where this is going. And you. But I was on the GameCube era. Like, I don't know. I liked, like, me growing up, I still had a PS2. I still had a PS1, you know, and I did like a lot of the weirdo games. Like, I was more interested in, like, the weird abstract games and stuff. And when the PS2 came out, there wasn't really much that was weird. There's a lot of stuff that was, like, trying to push that fidelity and try to tell a much more quote-unquote epic story. Some of them were, some of them really weren't, but they're just like, oh yeah, it's, you know, like Romance of the Three Kingdoms and stuff. Some of the games, like, that were introducing a new level of fidelity, like new character renderings and stuff, all on one screen, like Dynasty Warriors and stuff.
Man,
like,
I miss 6th Gen too, because that was when, like, they were starting to take the medium a little bit more seriously rather than just... I
don't think it was not just taking it seriously. I think it was more like they started understanding. I think they were starting to understand that that 3D space.
Okay.
That they were able to do more in that 3D space than you could do in a 2D space.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that was what made a lot of people go, you know what? Now that we understand this during the 64 PS1 era, is like, you know, now that we understand this, we should push this further.
Oh, okay. Because
at the time, all these budgets and all these expenses were roughly the same, regardless of ideas.
Yeah.
Right? They weren't like, if one thing failed, they could always lean back and sell another thing. You know?
Yeah.
So when the Dynasty Warriors games and stuff came out, it was like a huge thing. It was like, rendering all these characters? What? You know?
Yeah.
And like, it was their way to kind of leverage, oh, well, Nintendo couldn't do it. Because when Nintendo came out, so did the Xbox, like a week later. And the Xbox was like the de facto, like, let's soil any type of, like, because at that point in time, they didn't have the buying power. They weren't just going to buy out companies and stuff at the time, but they were planning on destroying a lot of other companies, because Nintendo already, like, backed down and refused their purchasing of Nintendo before they made the Xbox. And, like, they were literally laughed out of the office and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we're going to just destroy the GameCube. Like, that was their end goal there. like we're gonna destroy it so we can buy them up. That's basically their method.
Oh, okay.
So the whole kitty console, kitty this, kitty that, all that just got this slung as far as you can. Like there was pamphlets, there was posters, everything pro Xbox was just, we're better than a kitty system. And it was like this off-brand GameCube looking thing, everything on the corner, so people knew that what they were talking about, right? And because of that, it just made it worse and worse for Nintendo to do anything. So even when Nintendo had some decently looking games, people were like, it's not rated M, it's a kiddie console. Oh, a rated E game? How go figure? And because of that, nobody bought into the GameCube with already the momentum that they didn't have from the 64, because the 64's endgame was not there either. Like even when they released like the Paper Mario, the original Paper Mario, it was just not generating anything. The later releases for like other Nintendo 64 games were just like hodgepodge thrown together, get it on the system, see if we could sell something type of thing, even when it's not Nintendo. So the momentum wasn't even there for the GameCube from the 64. And then it was even worse because Microsoft started doing the whole edgelord, we're the coolest of cool, we're extreme, we're Xbox. Dude, there was like, they had a thing with the X Games where they were doing that, like an old version of the Wakanda salute, like crossing their arms, like we're Xbox, yeah, like this, like it was just like a cringier version of when Sega started trying to do the hipster stuff. When
I don't know.
Genesis.
I kind of missed that era though.
I only miss it because it was a time where everybody was just like, no, F you. Well, I'll say what I want. But now it's like, oh, I'll say what I want within reason, but I'll only agree with this group because this and this and this and blah, blah, blah.
I didn't get paid to say that? Sorry. I take that back. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, you know, like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. There was other things that were going on and blah, blah, blah. But the reason why I liked the GameCube, because it wasn't, like, where the PS2 and the Xbox were just both of them trying to appeal to the angsty teen. Even like people that weren't even like Square or anybody, like they were all making games that were just angsty RPGs and stuff. Like,
yeah.
There was one company that made called Guardians Crusade or something like that. It was just a cartoony knight with a pink rabbit thing that would transform periodically, and that was their RPG. That was the two characters you played in the RPG. Their next game was like some kind of like weirdo sci-fi grunge fest, and I was like, everything went that direction. Like, let's make things darker, let's make things more emotionally charged.
Matrix.
Let's make
Matrix.
things let's make things edgy. Let's make things that you don't understand how the emotions are. We need to make things emotional.
Well, I think they struck it at the right time too, and like I said, they do what Nintendo don't, because like people like Nintendo will gravitate towards Nintendo,
right?
And then they're like, well, let's do something that, because like if we make our own Mario, people won't really quite like, well, I'll just stick with Mario. So Sony, they're like, well, let's make a edgy Mario. Let's do what they're not doing. And I think that's kind of like why certain things will last. Just do what the other guy isn't doing.
And part of that does work, but the problem is like trying to appeal to a current wave of
trying to take
like
the audience
emotions,
too.
like, you know, like a certain trend of audience and stuff. Because our generation, we went from youthful to edgelord angsty teens. When the previous generation, when they went from youth into teens, they became rebellious rock stars. We became angsty, emotional, dramatic nonsense. And then the next generation became like these wannabe celebrities, micro celebrities everywhere. Every Gen Z out there is just a micro celebrity, apparently. Like, go ahead, take a picture. I'm Instagram famous. Oh, whatever. No, like, everyone has a like film and channel and followers and stuff. Everyone in this generation.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's just a phase. They're just going to eventually grow out of it, and they're going to be like, wow, I kept trying to appeal to only 150,000 people.
But it sold really well.
You know, like, it's just stuff like that, right? But the thing is, it only sells well that time.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why Sonic struggles now, because Sonic went to a very angsty, in-your-face attitude,
Yeah, he's
And
still
then-
stuck in the 90s.
and he's still stuck in this era, like the 90s 2000s era, and he's ping-ponging back and forth between these two eras. He's never getting away from it.
Yeah.
And the people who are huge fans of Sonic are people who thought, oh yeah, that was totally like they had. I swear, everyone who's still a huge fan of Sonic had an OC. Let's be real here. Like that's who still trumpets Sonic. Like, I want Sonic to succeed, but there's no way none of the, like, I'm glad Frontiers actually changed a lot of how he had to work and stuff. Like, he had more of the whole I will get it done because I'm the hero mentality and stuff. No way, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna in your face, egg boy. Like, he's not like that. He's like, no, I'm not gonna let you push me around, and I'm gonna save my friends. And fuck off. You know, like, he has more of a hero mentality now, and he was starting to get it over time, but there's always these weird things in it, and
not to mention you could only ride the slander for so long until it's like, hey, don't eat his pizza, eat our pizza because we're cool and radical. Until your pizza is shit, but the only thing you have is
the only
just,
thing you had was when you used to trash talk the other team.
but it's like it, yeah. So
and honestly, like, at the time, like, I think it's funny because out of the group of friends I had at the time when I was when the GameCube was current, I had to fight a lot of people on the Xbox age. Like, I think out of all the groups, like, the Xbox was like the community in the Xbox era side was just my rival, because whereas the PS2 had a lot of angsty teens and emos and stuff, like, the Xbox had a lot of dude bros. Like,
man,
there was people that said,
I don't remember anything.
I still remember a guy wearing a shirt with Mega Man on it, and it says "Know Your Games," and I was like, "Do you even know who that is?" And he goes, "Dude, it's Blue Team Master Chief. Come on, get with the times." I'm like, ouch. Like, it was that bad, right? But these guys would slander you every time. Like, you had a GameCube? Oh, that is so lame, dude. Like, how did you even survive? Like, did you even get laid? Did you even have a girlfriend? Are you even married? Are you even, like, why would you even try to have a good life now? Like, it's one of those people, like, if I meet them now, they almost sound like those people who peaked at high school and football was their thing.
Yeah.
Like, they never age out of it. They always boss around the nerds and stuff. Like, oh, yeah, Jonathan, you were a nerd? I remember that. You were such a loser. So what's going on? You doing some loser stuff now? I'm like,
sir, this is a Wendy's.
Phil, we're both in our late 30s, and you live in a trailer. You know, like let's be real here. One of us are much better off, you know. Like, it's one of those type of situations. Like, I feel like that is exactly what I would see with a lot of these, like, dude bro Xbox players. Like, it was just horrific, you know. And what about you? Like, what was, like, your rival?
One thing is, like, a lot of my friends did have PS2s, so we were like, oh, kiddie games. We don't like we're all edgy, cool, and stuff. Although I was never really there for the Xbox, mostly because you had, like, Xbox was just expensive to maintain because you have to get live, which is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, I was considering those three of the consoles. I was like, my parents will absolutely say no for internet and a monthly subscription, so I didn't touch the Xbox. But everybody's like, oh, Halo is so cool. But what other games do they have? I know, like, Brute Force was like...
Brute Force was a weird one. But they did have... Here's the stupidest thing, too. I remember their whole praising of bump mapping, which is like a textured thing that was going on in that era, right? Like, how to recycle these textures and stuff and make a pattern that would look like, you know, like a brick wall or what have you. And their go-to reference to it was the fucking Shrek game. And these dude bros would promote the Shrek. Well, we have bump mapping and textures and stuff like that. I was like, for a Shrek game, we have Rogue Squadron 2. You're welcome. You know, like, that's like, it was like this constant battle. Like, dude, we have, and like they would. I remember when what was it, Cubivore came out, and there was so many. Like, I remember one guy's like, "You're gonna buy Cubivore," and I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I bet you are. You know." He would say,
"Stupid Nintendo fanboy." Yeah.
Basically, let's just say that, right? But that's basically it, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, why? And he's like, you just like those games. I'm like, yeah. Like,
And now it's what? And now it's like what, $200 on eBay?
Dude, yeah. Like, what's funny is as soon as the GameCube exited the stage, people are like, man, remember the GameCube? It was so great. I'm like, where were you?
I never hated it. I believe
we all
in
loved the
GameCube.
games. Like, there's more people who love the GameCube and apparently played the GameCube now than the amount of GameCubes ever sold in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, where the hell were all of you? Like, what the hell happened?
Well,
right?
I think the nice thing about the GameCube is that you do have the diehard guys who are like, yeah, I like my childhood, so I'm gonna mod the shit out of this pile of GameCubes that I own for some reason, and now they're all worth $200 a console. Yeah. So, but yeah, they're hard to the core though. PS2s, I guess we just got like crazy emulation now.
Yeah, you got emulation out the wazoo because the PlayStation 2s are just broken
and all dying.
All of them, and it's sad, honestly. And I really hope that there's a company out there that will actually repair PS2s or actually like replicate the PS2 eventually, because honestly, nobody's doing it.
Yeah,
and that's the biggest concern is nobody's doing a replication of the PS1, PS2, or the PS3.
Well, Sony's weird
or
though.
the Dreamcast.
Sony's
that's
weird
also
though.
Weird.
Because like when the PS3 came out, they had to gut their backwards compatibility and the rumble.
I remember that because apparently the way the PS2 games were read were such a different way, it was melting PS3s. So they had they're like cramming two things together.
Well, I heard it was more just like legal issues. It was something along the lines of like legal issues because like the backwards compatibility was also encroaching on so and so's sales. So they just kind of like they just dropped the backwards compatibility instead of going to court for it. I don't know. It was weird as shit though.
Think about if they did that, we would still have probably more honest physical capabilities now.
Yeah.
Like physical media. But when they decided not to do that and they started like literally like you could think you could probably argue that was a catalyst that pushed us down the path to digital media. Almost.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure there's going to be a couple other things we could probably cite one of these days in the future and stuff too. But yeah, no, I don't know. Like it's weird that the GameCube is so in demand now that like even used games are just so hard to find. Like,
yeah,
even
there's a trillion mods for it. The freaking cables are like $200 too. If you want like the was it that scanning cable, whatever it is, this thing right here, yeah, it's like so expensive. And I guess it came out like for the tail end of the GameCube's
it came out in the last 2 years of the GameCube.
Yeah, okay.
It was around for 4 years, so I guess the second half.
So it's technically what 1080 720p, so it's 720
something at that point. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
It was basically to simulate the 1080s that were coming out at the time.
And then you had the fans who were like, we don't want to do that. I'd rather spend 20 hours modding it to have it HD. Hell yeah. Yeah. The modding scene's impressive as shit though.
Dude, the modding scene's getting blown out. Like I am just impressed with a lot of what people do with stuff. But yeah, so is there still traits in Sony now that you still enjoy? Like you still see it in them and stuff at all?
They're dead to me. I'm still pissed about Santa Incognito.
The stare that I got was
I'm still pissed about Santa Incognito.
the conversations we've had. And the fact that I still have to say this, like, how dare you say this on the podcast? Like, you don't make me say this.
Well, the thing is that, like, after okay, so Burst Renewal got censored the last minute. So it was on PS4, it was coming out, and then the last like week before it launched, Sony was like, "Oh yeah, this one thing you guys got to censor it." And they're like, everybody's saying, "Oh, it's intimacy mode or whatever." They just took that out. It's like, no, they censored it. Yeah. So
the thing is, like, when you force that stuff, it can steamroll into more other things. Because even though if that's the thing you can guarantee that was removed or censored, you can't guarantee what other things were changed.
Yeah.
Like that is still a situation. Now you can still argue that there's some particular like censorships that were changed because of cultural differences and stuff like that. But I don't think this is a case for this situation. But I still think like it still blows blows my mind that we haven't seen anything from Marvelous except for a crossover since then.
Well, even then though too, it's like it just kind of wrecked my trust for them, especially now that they're in California. They're not Japanese anymore. So it's like, well, the whole reason why I bought into your guys' stuff was because you guys had all the cool Japan stuff. You guys had all the cool weeb stuff.
And the niche RPGs.
And all that.
Like, it's really weird that because there was a lot of people who were holding on for dear life on Sony. And I saw it, like, I saw their brand change from, like, the niche stuff to just buy our brand to we're cool and you're going to be cool if you own us because we're cool. And it's gotten to that point, but you could see the niche people just still holding on like, nope, we're still going to, like, this is where our market is. We can't go anywhere else. This is our market. Dude, Falcom, who makes Ys and The Legend of Heroes and a couple other oddball RPGs out there, was like the de facto reference for people to say, no, at least Sony still has Falcom. Sony's Falcom is basically Sony's Rareware and all this other crap.
Don't deal with the devil.
Right? It took Nippon Ichi Software to come out to them like, how about we pay for the port to the Switch and port those games? Because they didn't have that many studios, so they can't port as many games. You know, they couldn't get as many games onto the Switch, but the Switch was doing numbers for the Disgaea franchise. That's why the Switch is the de facto timed exclusive for like a month or two. It's not that big, but that was their release on the Nintendo Switch first. Ever since when they released 5, it's been doing numbers for them. Like, holy crap!
Yeah.
But they're like, all right, so we're gonna reach out to Falcom because I think they as publishers, they're the ones that get the money for it. But because they did that, Falcom started noticing that people want games on the Switch, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm willing to bet that if the Switch 2 keeps this momentum and backwards compatibility, Falcom's new releases are going to just dominate, right? But they were holding on all the way up to this point. They were damn near bankrupt. So imagine how many other weeb games that were out there that we don't even know. Like, there's some like oddball companies that released maybe 3 games, but they didn't want to leave the PlayStation's market because that was the market. That was nowhere else because that's how people saw it. You know, so people are like, oh yeah, the PS4 is just dominant in Japan. They're gonna have a lot of weebs. But even during the PS4's era, the niche markets were not as thriving. They were just like stabilized.
It was so expensive to develop for.
Yeah. Well, on top of that, like, their markets were stabilized, but they weren't good.
Yeah.
Like, they were lower than they used to be on the PS2, which were peak because that was when they were still appealing to it. But then they became this brand where if you're buying a PS4, you want games that push the PS4. You know, they weren't like, oh, I don't want anime RPG number 663. You know, like, they don't want that.
But that was the whole reason why I went there. But
that was the whole reason a lot of the market went there.
But now it's like, I don't know, they ruined my trust in them. Like, I don't even want a PS5. I don't know what they can do to get me to get a PS5 or a PS6. Even if they went back to Japan and say, hey, we're sorry, we're not going to do this ever again, please come back. Like, no, you're just going to, you guys could just fly to California again and say, fuck you, PS7 is Western developed. Like,
yeah.
Because if you guys could censor on a dime, it's like, well, I don't trust you guys anymore.
Right.
So I ain't coming back. Not to mention, like, everything else I could just get on PC now. So
and just mod it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's what's really wild. The difference between this generation and now is because the PC is just this giant monolith that just exists in the background now. You know what I mean? Like, and as much as I know, I'm kind of more of a PC master race in admittance that yes, the PC is just pretty much the de facto powerhouse. Period. I don't get to play too much on the PC just because I don't get to be here very often. So that's why I like the Switch, because I could take it with me. But outside that, like, as far as traits for me and Nintendo, like, the traits that I liked is that Nintendo still just makes games. Just like, I'm just making games, bro. Like, that's literally how they've always been. And even though they were more draconian about how the content was during the Super Nintendo and 64 era, which kind of screwed them over, they're more like, we're still going to make our power.
Yeah.
You know, we're still going to make our games. The reason why they're not worried about the resellers is because they make games people want to keep. And stuff like that. Like the game, like, they just released the digital versions, of the Golden Sun collection, right?
Wait, really?
Yeah, on the Game Boy Advance, Nintendo Switch Online thing.
Oh, so they didn't then.
So they didn't necessarily, like I said, but those games, because people loved keeping them of the Game Boy Advance versions, they're like $160 right now.
Holy crap.
Yeah, right? Like, that's because people want to keep those games, so they're so much harder to find.
Yeah.
So the fact that Nintendo still just rolls on is like, fuck you, I'm making Mario Brothers Wonder, and people just eat it like, dude, what? I want that, and like everyone just eats that up.
Well, it is
like,
kind of nice too that Nintendo does acknowledge their used market as well. Mm-hmm. Like, they are very conscious and aware of it. So,
but if they just make physical versions and stuff, I would buy them. I would buy and collect and hoard them like fucking Smog. But you know, it sucks right now. But but that's like, I like that trait, and I like the fact that they are doing that. And honestly, that kind of trait I see a lot in a lot of indies, and that's why I think that's why I promote indies way more than any AAA developer and stuff too. Like, I genuinely think there's a lot of developers out there that are indie that have the capacity to be as big as Nintendo if they just keep being true to the fun that they like to generate. I think Way Forward and Yacht Club can easily be kind of like a Capcom, because they're in that kind of weird pseudo edgy era, and they're like kind of experimental and stuff. But there's people out there that do just stuff. They're like, we're just doing fun stuff, guys, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's why I like a lot of indies more than I like any of the AAA developers nowadays.
Yeah, I don't go too hard on AAAs, mostly because they'll do fine, even if it's like, oh, I haven't touched this game in, what was it? Like, oh, it released 10 years ago. Okay, I'll play it now, because it's like, they've been making sales since, so it's like, they'll be fine.
Yeah,
don't worry about AAA.
They'll be fine. So, but yeah, no, that's like, I think that's the only trait I'm glad I see and stuff. Even in the traits that I see from what I used to rival with me, Xbox isn't even doing that either anymore. That dude bro stuff. But Xbox is also just doing stuff I think is probably way worse. Is just buying up other companies. Like, yeah, you know those cool games? That was us. No, it's not. No, it's not. Like,
they got rid of the original directors of the 360 and the Xbox. Those guys were hardcore gamers. I missed those guys.
And I think that was the problem, is because they railed against the marketers that could make them more money as opposed to actually making games.
Yeah.
So they got rid of them. They're like, all right, time to make money. Because that's all they cared about.
Yeah.
Like, just making money.
It's just shit. I know when the 360 came out, they lost so much money on this Xbox that when 360 came out, they're still trying to recoup money for the Xbox. Mm-hmm. Just because they like games.
Genuinely, I think they're losing money on the Xbox X as well. Like, I think they are.
Yeah, for sure.
I think they're desperately trying to push the Xbox brand into a
brand,
service
lifestyle
brand, a service and lifestyle brand.
Yeah.
So they don't have to release another console ever again.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to probably make another one that's going to be a cloud-based system after Xbox X, and people are just going to buy that, and it's going to be a small cube. Oh, it's portable. It can go anywhere. You just plug it into any of your TVs, and you got your stuff. And people are like, oh, yeah, all my stuff like that. It's not your stuff, moron.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that's going to happen. I swear. Honestly, I have not been wrong with some of these predictions at all. And I think that is exactly what's going to happen in the next generation of Xbox. And people are going to eat it up. They're like, we get all these games on launch? Yeah.
Until something weird happens.
Dude, honestly, I see Xbox changing stuff, like adding multiplayer to single player games. Be like, oh, multiplayer, yeah, that would be great. But then you're basically saying it's okay to change old games, and then if that means that, then
it's not the original game anymore.
they're willing to do more like that, like remove things they might find troublesome, which is a concern for people who might want to experience stuff the way the game was originally experienced.
Yeah, and
that is a huge concern. So. But I'm going to leave it on that because it makes it very eerie, right?
What faction were you in?
Yeah, what faction were you guys in? Xbox, ew. PS2, ew. Dreamcast, you're okay.
Die!
Ah! Ah! If you like our content, feel free to like, subscribe, and share. Blah, blah, blah. Ah! But anyway, as always, we'll see you on the other side. Hey everyone, this is Paraka.
And Ghost.
I would like to say thank you for listening to our podcast.
If you like our content, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe and share our video with your friends.
You can also follow and support us on other social media, such as Minds and Rumble. Links in the description below.